Hey again, everybody. It's your old pal Guardian Enzo live on tape from beautiful and starting to be frigid Kyoto, Japan, here with another Lost in Anime season preview. Hard to believe. We've blown through another year, and it was another pandemic year too, with no end in sight. Omri Kloss is coming to town, but you know what? We'll muddle through. We'll get through somehow, as we always do. Hopefully, 2022 will be a better year. Hopefully, in the larger scheme of things, it doesn't matter so much, but hopefully, it'll be a better year for anime. That's really the theme here. We're in the first preview of 2022, Winter 22 preview. And if you follow the anime news, or if you even just follow me on Twitter, there's a lot of pretty damn interesting and good stuff coming up in 2022 sequel wise to some big shows. Some stuff that was in my best of the 2010s top 20 list, my top anime of last year. There's some good stuff coming up sequel wise. A kind of a banner year for sequels. Unfortunately, though, there's not a lot of it that's coming up in the winter. So winter typically is not a real big anime season in terms of quality. So that's nothing too shocking. There's not a lot on the winter schedule. I'll be honest to tell you right up front. There's not a lot on the winter schedule that's super exciting, but we can always find some good stuff in there. As it often is, winter is a fairly small schedule by anime standards this year. There's about 36 shows, I think, is what I count. And I'm previewing in my website preview about 13 of them. I usually do about a third, so it's a little higher percentage than normal. Frankly, when the seasons look this thin, I tend to lower the bar a little bit to what I'll include in the preview, just because it hardly even seems worth it to do a preview that has 5, 6, 7 shows in it. So, like I said, lots of stuff coming up in 2022. Not a lot in winter 2022, but there are a few shows that are of interest and a couple of big screen things that are particularly of interest. So we'll definitely be talking about those. As is my usual practice since I've started doing these things, the website preview over on LAA, which of course will be linked in the description below, that will cover more in terms of breadth, a little more blurbs on every show, a little more detail, just a little more, I should say, a little more coverage in terms of breadth of series. Here we'll go into a little deeper detail on a couple of shows that I'm particularly interested in and a couple of movies that I'm particularly interested in. So again, breadth on the website and depth on YouTube is kind of my strategy with season previews. So without further ado, let's just jump right in, and I'll say in my top category, if you've been following my previews on the site, I've been doing them for almost a decade now. Highest expectations. Well, there ain't nothing in there, so we'll blow through that one real quick. There's nothing in highest expectations this season. It is what it is. Certainly not the first time that's ever happened, but it's always a little bit of a letdown when you don't have anything you can put in that category. So we jump right to the mid-table. Got a few shows in there, a couple of sequels. And my top pick for this season really is Karakai Jouzu no Takagi-san 3, which, I really like the second season. I like the manga, and I really like the second season. It was, in fact, my number 2 series. It was my number 10 series, I believe, of 2019, which was not a super deep year for anime, but nevertheless, after the first season, I would have never expected it. But Season 2 was a huge step up. It was one of the biggest jumps in quality from a Season 1 to a Season 2 of any series that I can remember, in fact. Part of it was because the anime, the series just gets better. The manga gets better. The dynamic between Nishikata and Takagi gets much more interesting as their relationship develops and moves past the kind of schoolgirl, schoolboy teasing thing that drives the story for the first half of the manga or close to it. And the other thing was that the anime by Shin-A Animation included some original material, and some of that original material, I have to say, was as good or better as anything from the manga. So full credit to the anime for that. I think this was a case where the anime really improved on the manga in many meaningful ways. It elevated Karakai Jouzu to its highest point, in my opinion. It isn't a series I would like to be at the head of my table for any given anime season. It's not one that I would expect to be a great show, but it is what it is. That's my top pick this season, and I would not be stunned if it entered my top 10 at the end of 2022, depending on how deep 2022 turns out to be. Because, as I said, the manga does continue to get better as the relationship deepens. So I think that I would expect a relatively stable, or even a continuation of the upward plane for this series, which, again, the second season was really good, so that's all positive. Once you get past Karakai Jouzu, we're looking at a couple of adaptations of series that I don't know. I don't know much about the manga. I know a little. Sono Bisque wa Koi wo Suru is my top non-sequel pick of the season. My Dress Up Darling is the English title on this. And it's a manga by an author named Shinichi Fukuda, who I'm not familiar with. And it's basically about a guy who's into Japanese dolls. That's his thing. And he gets a lot of guff for that, as you can imagine he might, as a boy. And eventually he winds up connecting with a girl who's into cosplay and all sorts of other interesting things. And she's got a whole circle of friends that surround her with this hobby. And I had my concerns that this might be a little bit on the mean-spirited side. From what I'm told by people who have read the manga, that's not the case. So the preview on this is pretty striking. The manga does have a good reputation. So I have fairly high expectations for this, largely because it's not a season with a ton of super, super interesting prospects. But judging by the reputation that the manga has, and judging by how interesting the preview looks, this is probably my top pick for non-sequel anime this season. Sono Bisque wa Koi wo Suru. Not any huge names in the staff list on this at Cloverworks, but we'll see. It looks good. Next up is Barou no Souretsu, which is the story of Richard III, who is, as I imagine most of us know, is a pretty important figure in literary and literal history. His reign really marked the end of the Middle Ages in Britain. One of Shakespeare's most famous tragedies is about him. In the manga that this is based on is a shoujo manga, and pretty well regarded shoujo manga at that, by an author named Kano Aya, who is a pretty well known shoujo mangaka. I think this is one that has been running for a long time, almost a decade. I'm not expecting it to get anything like a complete adaptation, so there are some definite yellow flags here, but it looks interesting. The anime version has cast Richard as a hermaphrodite, which is something which, as far as I know, does not have any historical basis in fact. It's just an affectation for fictional purposes. There may be some fantasy elements here. Joan of Arc being involved in a story about Richard III is certainly a flight of fancy. We'll see. This being a JC staff anime in the modern era, you're not expecting this to look great or anything, but again, the preview looks pretty good. This one, mostly based on the reputation of the manga, which is quite well regarded, is why I'm ranking it as high as I do, plus the fact that British history is an interesting theme that I always am interested to see anime and manga tackle. So that's probably my. I would say I rank Sono Bisque just a little bit ahead of that in terms of my expectations, but would not shock me to see that be the better series. And then last in this mid-tier category, mid-table, is the second season of Vanitas no Carte, which, first season, you and I watched it. It was basically, it's a split core, so there should be a pretty contiguous move there. Uh, could be a good show. I mean, I liked the first season. I didn't love it. It was a nice looking Bone series, not a great looking Bone series. The director is a Shaft veteran, and there were occasions during the first season where things got a little shafty for my taste, a little twitchy visually, but uh, eh, not to the point where it became intolerable. Uh, Pandora Hearts is Mochizuki Jun's most famous manga, and judging by my experience with that, it's a series that got more interesting and more complex as it progressed. So it's certainly not going to shock me if that's also the case with Vanitas as well. And that one, again, the manga's ongoing, but we'll get a second core. It'll stop somewhere in the middle of the story, but I'm expecting that to be pretty good. No reason to think it won't be. And that, in a relatively thin season, is actually it for that mid-table category as well. And this is the point really where you can reference the season preview on the website, which is really made to be more of a reference. This is more highlighting stuff that really interests me. I've got about 10 shows on this, almost 10 shows in this modestly interested category, and honestly, most of them you could lump in a big pile. I could have stuck them in any order. They're pretty much all stabs in the dark for me. The one exception to that is Sasaki to Miyano, which is an interesting series about a high schooler in a all-boys school who's into BL and tries, of course, as a high schooler in a boys' school would, to keep that from his fellow students. And the secret gets out, and a senpai named Sasaki. Miyano is the first-year student who's into BL, and Sasaki is the senpai who finds out about this and is into Miyano. It's interesting. When you call something a BL series, there are certain trope expectations that go along with that. And there's some disagreement about whether this series should be called BL or a BL-themed comedy, where the misunderstanding is that his interest in BL, but it isn't literally BL. I guess in the end, it doesn't really matter, but again, when you label something as boys love, there is a certain expectation that goes along with that in terms of the tropes that the series will employ. So I like this series. I don't love it. I actually the author has another series called Butai ni Sake, which is about a drama club, which I find actually more interesting. And the most interesting character in this series is one of the side characters named Hirano, and he got his own spin-off manga. So in many respects, this is like my third choice of this author's manga that they could have adapted. But I get why they picked this one, and it does have some nice moments. Honestly, my biggest issue with this series is that Sasaki, the older student who finds out about the younger one's interest and pursues him, to me, he's kind of a creepy guy. If he pulled the shit he pulls on Miyano, on a girl, I think people would be calling him, would be calling him a predator. Not everyone agrees with me on that, but you make up your own mind if you watch it. It's Studio Dean, which is the epicenter of this sort of series, not surprisingly, has a decent staff. I'm fully expecting this to be pretty good. I did realize that the literal title of this series is S&M, of course, Sasaki to Miyano, and thinking about Sasaki's character, I'm sure that's coincidental, but it does make me think certain things. In any event, so that's the one series in the modest category that I have some personal experience with and could maybe say I have an idea of what to expect. Other than that, it's pretty thin on the ground. A lot of shots in the dark, not even anything I would really consider a huge sleeper candidate. Couple of original sports anime. One of them is about a bunch of salarymen who play badminton, which is an odd theme. That's called Ryman's Club. And then there's one called Futsal Boys, which it's got 5 exclamation points, so you know it's going after the haiku crowd. This one is about futsal. If you don't know, futsal is 5-on-5 soccer played in a small arena-style field. Quite popular, especially in urban areas. I've played it a bit myself. The hook with Futsal Boys is that the cast of the various school teams, and it's almost entirely new Seiyu as far as I can tell, are actually going to play real futsal matches against each other. And the results of those matches are going to be incorporated in the storylines of the anime. So, make of that what you will. It's a multimedia project that seems to be the thing nowadays with games and all kinds of other stuff. A lot of CG in the anime from what I can tell. Modest expectations there. A couple of series I would maybe say would be sleepers would be Tokyo 24-ku, which is a sort of a modern time travel crime story. It looks like a very sort of a generic sounding premise, but some good people involved, including Suda Naokatsu as the director, who directed Ino X Boku SS, which is quite a good series, Ino Boku SS, where the manga passed away in her early 30s, by the way. Very, very sad story there. On Air Dekinai, a 1-volume manga from 2017, which lands an anime in 2022. I haven't quite figured out how that happens. It's about a young guy who works as a production assistant in television and discovers that how the sausage is made is not exactly a glamorous process. And a bunch of feed corn about that, and any one of those other shows might be fine, but I don't have high expectations for any of them. Going down to the last item on the list, which is the final season part 2 of Shingeki no Kyoujin. If you follow Lost in anime at all, you know my long and checkered history with Shingeki no Kyoujin. I think it pretty much fully embraces all of the mangaka's predilections in this final turn of the story. It gets really dark when you realize that all the stuff you thought he couldn't possibly really be thinking that is true. He really was thinking it. A lot of people will defend it and defend him to the ends of the earth. In my opinion, it's pretty clear where he's going with this series, but my issue, honestly, at this point, I've been blogging Attack on Titan since the beginning, suffered through indignities like the interminable Trost arc, and many since, highs and lows, a lot of really, really offensive behavior from people in the comments section. I'm not ready to give up on it with only one more core of anime to survive, so I would think I'll probably try to stick this out till the end. But if it gets really nasty, as it might, I'm not making any promises, but I would be pissed if I dropped this series, a few episodes from the finish after slogging through it for this long. So that's Shingeki. And then there's one kind of odd sort of or category series that doesn't really fit any of the above categories, but that's Link Click. And Shiguang Daily Ren, the donghua of the Chinese animation series that was one of the best shows on any medium in 2021 and has a sequel coming in 2022. It's a Chinese animated series about a pair of young fellows who can basically time travel by using photographs, and it involves a lot of historical events in modern China, and there's some crime elements involved. It's a thriller, it's sci-fi, it's funny, it's extremely sad at times. It's really, 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 really good. And the reason I'm including it in my preview this time is because they're coming out with a Japanese dub of it in winter 2022. And if someone streams it or someone decides to fan sub it, I'm hoping that a lot of people who didn't watch it the first time around will watch it. It may seem a little strange to watch something dubbed from Chinese to Japanese and then subtitled into English, but it has a very, very good Japanese cast, and I generally tend to prefer the acting style in Japanese anime to Chinese donghua. Although I will say the acting in Link Click was really excellent, and I thought that the cast who did the original Mandarin did a wonderful job. However, I will watch it in Japanese just to have a different experience, and because I don't need an excuse to watch it again. That's how good it is. And I'm hoping somebody streams it subtitled or some independent group subs it, because I would like more people to experience this series. And maybe there's some folks out there who don't or won't watch Chinese animation, but will watch something dubbed into Japanese. It may not literally be anime, but Shiguang Daliren is as good as... I mean, the ratings you see for this on the aggregator sites to me are not exaggerated. This series is really, really good, and I hope people will watch it. And like I said, it may seem weird to watch Japanese dubbed Chinese subbed into English, but if that's what it takes to get people to watch it, or if that's what you're comfortable with, by all means. As to what I will do if the second season comes out in Chinese and Japanese at the same time, I don't know which I'll watch it in, but we'll see. We'll see. Lastly, we have the theatrical side of things. And on the theatrical side of things, because we're skipping OVA, by the way, there are no OVAs I thought were... There's only a couple of OVAs actually coming out this season, and OVAs have been on the decline for quite some time. So that's really no surprise. Theatrical, though, there are some interesting films coming out, and it starts with Chikyuugai Shonen Shoujo by the great Iso, excuse me, the great Iso Mitsuo, who did Den-O Coil seemingly forever ago, but back in 2007, I guess it was. Holy cow, was it 2007? I think it was. Anime's greatest year. He wanted to make this into a TV series, but he couldn't get funding for it. Which reminds me very much of the experience that Akane Kazuki had with Hoshie no Sora, where he wanted to make a 2-core series and was promised the funding for it, only to have it yanked midway through production and having to end after 1 core. It says something about the state of TV anime in these days in the production committee system, that these guys can't make series. They love TV anime. This is what they wanted to do, and they can't do it because the production committee system throttles the creativity of the medium. It's a shame, but it is what it is. So he got funding basically to do a 2-part streamed theatrical release, Netflix release, kind of a combo thing. It's going to air in 2 parts. The first one, January 28th. And in fact, judging by the preview, there may even be some sort of continuity with Den-O Coil here, although I'm not certain about that. A couple of the characters certainly look similar. It's a story about a bunch of children who are stranded in the years 2045, and they're stranded after a disaster, stranded alone on a space station. And Iso is very fascinated with technology, as anyone who watched Den-O Coil will know. And the technology is one of the stars of this series as well. He's wonderful writing children. He's wonderful exploring technology. He's just a great talent, and I would be shocked if this isn't spectacularly interesting and maybe just spectacular. I wish it was a series, but I'll take 2 parts in film format if that's what we're going to get. And again, that premieres on January 28th, and all things being equal, that's my top anime pick of winter, more so than anything that's airing on TV. We also have the Fruits Basket Prelude film, which tells the story of Toru's parents. So there is some postscript material, apparently. Takaya Natsuki, the mangaka, wrote this, and she wrote some new material that set after the anime ends. But the main thrust of this is looking back on the love story between Toru's parents. So if you're interested in that element of Fruits Basket, that could be good. And last, Goodbye DonGlees, which is a sort of an interesting madhouse film project written and directed by Ishizuka Atsuko, who's been at Madhouse for a long time and done some very good work, and much more as a director than as a writer, so that's an unknown factor. But this looks really interesting. It's sort of a boys' adventure story. It's set in Iceland, and I kind of have sleeper vibes with this, that this could be really good. Goodbye, DonGlees. That and Fruits Basket both premiere February 18th. Chikyuugai Shounen Shoujo, Extraterrestrial Boys and Girls, as they're calling it in English, that premieres January 28th. So it should be a pretty good season for film, if not TV anime. But we'll see. TV seasons have surprised me before. I don't see a lot of sleepery looking things on this schedule that scream upside, but hey, you never know. And that is my winter preview for 2022. Again, I think the next couple of previews, judging by what I know or believe to be coming as far as sequels are concerned, could have a lot more firepower behind them. We'll see. For now, enjoy, some pleasant stuff like Karakai Jouzu. Hopefully one of these originals or one of these adaptations that are anime original, at least the first seasons, will surprise us on the upside. And a couple of interesting films, and then link click. And if you're going to watch anything streamed, link click may be your best bet, especially if you've never seen it, because I'm telling you, I'm not exaggerating, this thing is really good. It really blew through some biases I had about Chinese animation, and it convinced me that it was capable of going to places that I hadn't seen it go before. So that's winter 2022. We got lots of good stuff coming up, including the year-end top 10 countdown and other things. And looking forward to, again, hopefully 2022 being a better year than 2021, both in anime and for all of us in the world. And it's always my humble request, if you like what you see, if you like what you hear, I'd be very grateful if you hit the subscribe button. If you hit the like button, of course, if you comment either on LAA or here at YouTube, I will happily respond to your comments. Look forward to the conversation. And again, stay tuned for some good stuff before the end of the year. And I hope everyone has a great holiday season. As always, I implore you, by all means, to stay frosty. And I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.